would like to be recognized.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. First of all, let me just mention, this is really kind of an Oklahoma hearing. We have, I look out here, I see Julie Daniels. I've worked with her on projects up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Matt Meyer, Shane Fry, Wendy Taylor, Kirby Crow, Karen Keith. Karen Keith's a good liberal Democrat like you, Madam Chairman, and I want you to know, we all
Good
get
for
along.
you, Karen.
You'd be surprised how well we get along, and I'm pretty extreme on the right. She's pretty extreme on the left.
No,
We all
speak
understand.
for yourself. I'm not extreme.
But we
Just
all
ask
agree.
Bernie Sanders. He doesn't think I'm extreme at all.
No, you're going to have to give me more time if we're going to talk about Bernie.
You've got an extra minute.
Well,
Anytime.
okay, my point is this. We can all agree that government has functions to perform. In this WRDA bill, Water Resource Development Act, as well as what we're trying desperately to get, and I talked to this group yesterday about the reauthorization of the transportation. It's something we need to be done. Mm-hmm. Well, these are authorization bills. And those people out there that call them earmarks, and I'm the only one up here who can really address this in a convincing way, because the reason I'm late is because I had to go over there and get my award for being number one, the 100% by the American Conservative Union, right before I came here. Last month, the National Journal had me ranked as the most conservative member of the United States Senate. Now, I say that because I'm a very strong believer that our system will work if people will get serious about it, and we go through authorization. When we go through authorization, we qualify these things. When we sit down and did the 2005 reauthorization bill for transportation, we had criteria. Everything had to meet this criteria. Then we made allocations out to states. This is the way it's supposed to happen. And people who talk about earmarks, it's the phoniest issue out there, because the very individuals who complain about earmarks are the ones who vote for the very largest multi-hundred-billion-dollar bills. Then they hold up this earmark thing to make people think they're conservative. Let me be specific. One of the votes that I bothered me, I hate to say this in front of my friends who voted for it, but was the $700 billion bailout. That was October 1st of 2008. Then we had the $300 billion mortgage bailout. We had the $50 billion the PEPFAR bill that increased the amount of money going to communicable diseases in foreign countries. They vote for all these things, then they turn around and complain about the things that we're doing here today. Now, the bottom line is this. We have needs that are out there. We have in my state of Oklahoma things that need to be done, things that are the legitimate function of government to do. This WRDA bill is to make sure that we don't put out things that are not deserving of public funding and that they go through the process. So I had to say that because I know that there are so many people who exploit this notion of earmarks, and it's something that is, it's got to be exposed sooner or later. So this is sooner. Let me ask you, Mr. Woodruff, I had an opening statement. I was going to talk about a little bit about what I just now said, but in a little nicer way, but that took too long. I also was going to mention that not many people realize that my state of Oklahoma is really a navigable state. We have a waterway that comes all the way from I'm sure you're aware of this, Senator Alexander. It comes all the way up the Mississippi and the Arkansas River, and we're moving goods in and out, and it's a great thing. I'd like to ask Mr. Woodruff, you're familiar with what we do. I'd like to have you kind of, from your perspective, describe how this great event, and I'm particularly biased to this waterway because my father-in-law, many years ago, along with McClellan and Kerr, had a lot to do with building this thing. How does this has this contributed and still contributing today to the economy of Oklahoma and surrounding states?
Well, immeasurable ways. We talked about agricultural exports, fertilizer coming in, agricultural products going out. There is oil products, petroleum products that come into the Port of Catoosa, the Tulsa Port of Catoosa, that otherwise would be on trains or trucks, causing congestion on our highways. But in terms of jobs, I'm thinking of a facility right there in Catoosa that builds huge heat exchangers that are used throughout the world in industrial facilities. And if it weren't for the waterway there, I don't think those products could ever leave their factory and go to those markets. So for those cargoes that are just too big to go by other modes, that allows jobs to be created and maintained good, high-paying manufacturing jobs right there in Catoosa serving the world.
Well, you see, that's the point I'm making, and the things that we do, and I would say the same thing about some of the EDA programs, but since our time is short, and I'm sure the chairman has told you that we have a vote coming up. We can get. It's already started? Yes. Okay. Anyway, let me just ask our friend from the Chamber of Commerce. I made some pretty strong statements concerning this fraud called earmarks. Do you have any thoughts about this? Because generally the Chamber, these are conservative people, free enterprising people, and how do you see this in terms of the role of conservative government serving America?
Well, certainly when it comes to a WRDA bill in particular, this has always been a project-based bill. It's been a way to designate things that are important to the nation and important to the economy. And I think we differentiate between earmarks, which are sort of the items that people say, yeah, this would be a great idea to do, this is what I need to in order to vote for a bill, and things that really look at what is important to the economic elements of the nation. That's why in our work that we're doing on both safety levy reauthorization and on this, we're focused on how do you get the biggest bang for the buck out of every project.
All right. Would you agree with this? If we would redefine earmark as an appropriation that has not been authorized, I'm with everybody on this. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely.
There's the solution to the problem, Madam Chairman.
Well, I agree fully.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Senator Alexander, I just want you to know.
I'm going to turn this hearing over to Senator Inhofe. He's so excited to have so many of his constituents here.
Well, let me just mention before she goes out the door. Karen, just come back here. I just wanted you to meet Barbara before you leave.
Just come around that way. Just this way and up the steps
yeah.
and back there. And but I made Senator Inhofe promise that he would not characterize his view of my politics. And he said he would not. And, you know, I said, if it's mainstream Democrat, that's what I am. So, but he said he won't go there. He's just going to behave and do great.
I'll make this real brief. In fact, while you're still here, Madam Chairman, I only wanted to say, and first of all, on these things, as I told all of you who are here, they're here because this is the chamber in Oklahoma, and I invited them to come by today, and they're very interested. Each one who's here is interested in something that we're doing with the WRDA bill, potentially, what we want. And so that's why we do get along. The only last thing I wanted to say in terms of the earmark argument is the importance of authorization. Authorize, then appropriate. But if you appropriate without authorizing, that's where you get in trouble. That's where things that don't deserve to get funded get funded. And people have got to learn that. The other example I was going to use is my other committee, which is the Senate Armed Services Committee. Just to give you an example, we have experts that will evaluate our platforms, our ability to defend America, such as national missile defense systems, how we want redundance in all three, in the boost phase, mid-course phase, terminal phase. And if you don't do that, then you're going to depend on the president coming through and saying, well, we're not going to have we don't need a boost phase because we've got something. That's the role that authorizers do. We have experts that make these decisions. Any of these earmarks that they talk about, if you kill an earmark on the floor of the Senate, it doesn't save 1 cent. That money goes right back to the administration. And if you think that, well, anyway, we do a good job. The authorization process is a good process. That's what we're doing here today, and I commend you on holding this here.
Well, Senator, I think it's so great that we can work together on these infrastructure programs, because you and I just agree completely. And I just wanted to point out, when we worked on the last WRDA, we had an uphill climb because we had a presidential veto. And we teamed up, and I checked with my staff. In the history of the nation,
a Republican veto, that was.
Yeah, I know, but
well, I'm just making sure
that's right, and it was harder for you, really, and I was so grateful, but we did it, and I checked back in the history of the nation. There's only been 110 successful veto overrides. That's it, from the beginning of the country, and we were involved in that one. And I just think it speaks to what we need to do. And again, whether it's moving people, moving cargo, all the things you were also eloquent about, whether we're the Chamber of Commerce representing business, the labor unions represented here in many ways by Victor, the general contractors, a very large and successful company. This is a place where we can cut through the partisanship, we can come together and And Senator Inhofe and I are bound and determined to get this done. We thank you all. This has been a brief hearing, but you said it right.
Let me remind you also that there was a veto threat on the Transportation Reauthorization Bill.
Yes.
And I think the fact that I made it very clear that the Republicans, that some of us were going to be fighting that just like we did in WRDA, and I think that's probably the reason there wasn't one.
It's probably true.
Good.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.